Hi, hello, and welcome to the very first episode of Rebecca in Audio, the podcast for RebeccaImprint.com. I'm Rebecca, and I am ridiculously excited to have you here. I'm equally excited just to be doing this, to finally be talking to you in this format. This is something I've wanted to try for a really long time. The conversations that live over on Rebecca in Print felt like they'd translate really naturally into audio. So thank you for being here with me at the very start. It means a lot and I'm very excited for this journey. I spent a lot of time debating what the first episode should be. Should it be commentary? Should it be nostalgia? Should I adapt one of the pieces from the website that's already up into an audio format? Because there are a lot of pieces on Rebecca in Print, and I think in our little corner of the internet that would work really well in a podcast format. Sometimes I don't have the space that I need to give a topic some real breathing room, and I feel like in an audio format I could really expand a lot more on some topics that I would love to chat more about. And in the end, after going back and forth with myself more times than I care to admit, I decided to start with the post that people keep coming back to. It's the most popular, the most searched for, and it's the most evergreen piece I've written so far on the website. So today, we're diving into the real story behind the 1997 Fox animated classic, Anastasia. So get cozy and let's get into it. You know that meme that asks what two chords could you use to summon an entire generation? I think for some of us, it's Liz Calloway singing Once Upon a December. Just the first few words and suddenly an entire wave of nostalgia hits. And you can just see all of the millennials coming across the horizon in honour of Anastasia. The 1997 animated film Anastasia holds a very special place in a lot of hearts, including mine. It's romantic, it's haunting, it's musical, and at its centre is a young woman searching for who she really is. We've got iconic voice acting, we've got unforgettable songs, we've got the beautiful magic of Don Bluth animation. What more could you possibly need? But beneath the ball gowns and the Broadway-style numbers is a much darker truth. Because Anastasia, who, by the way, is not a princess, her real title was Grand Duchess. So let's just put that out there first. And her story is rooted in one of the 20th century's greatest tragedies. In this episode, we're exploring the real history behind Anastasia, what the film got right, what it changed, and why the myth of a long-lost Romanov captivated the world for so long. Released by Fox Animation Studios and now technically part of the Disney Library after the 2019 acquisition and Disney swallowing a chunk of Hollywood, Anastasia was Fox's answer to the Disney princess powerhouses. And I feel like this really brings her full circle because at the time of release, a lot of people were under the misconception that Anastasia was a Disney princess. She was part of around the time when there was lots of Disney princesses coming out, and she was a huge film. She was animation, there was singing. It had a lot of the Disney qualities, and a lot of people did think that she was a Disney princess. And now she's a part of the Disney catalogue, so that misconception does continue for a big group of people. But she's not even a princess, as we discussed, so technically she is a Disney-acquired Grand Duchess, is what we will call her. With Meg Ryan in the film voicing the fiery, independent Anastasia, and Christopher Lloyd giving us an absolutely unhinged villainous Rasputin, the film blends real historical elements with pure fantasy and some smashing bops. That makes me sound so old. Yep, bops. I use the word bops. Set in post-revolutionary Russia, the story follows an amnesiac orphan named Anya on a journey to Paris, slowly discovering she might be the missing Grand Duchess Anastasia. Add a very handsome, charming conman, a bat sidekick, and some truly iconic musical numbers, and it's no wonder the film became a classic. But how close is it to the real story? Well, that's what we're here to find out, isn't it? So let's get on with it. Let's start at the beginning of the film, which, unfortunately, for the people we're discussing, the beginning is actually also the end. The Romanov family, Tsar Nicholas II, Empress Alexandra and their 5 children, including Anastasia, were overthrown during the Russian Revolution in 1917. After centuries of imperial rule, Russia was in chaos. People were starving, war was raging, and resentment toward the monarchy had reached breaking point. In the early hours of July 17th, 1918, the Romanov family were taken and executed. Their bodies were buried in secret, which led to decades of uncertainty about what had even really happened. The film understandably doesn't show any of this. It is a family movie, it's aimed at children, it's Don Bluth, it has songs in it. I think it would be a bit of a shock if it showed children being dragged and executed, but it does hint at the violence and upheaval that followed. For many viewers, Anastasia was the first time they'd even ever heard of the Russian Revolution, or maybe even the Romanov name. Because of this uncertainty, for decades rumours swirled that Anastasia, or sometimes the rumour said her sister Maria, might have survived. Because two of the children's remains weren't discovered for nearly 90 years, the idea that one of them had escaped became a genuine historical mystery. A history mystery, if you will. And as we have seen with other famous history mysteries, such as The Princes in the Tower, wherever there is a gap in evidence, theories will thrive. This mystery inspired books, films, and a series of real-life imposters. If you ever want to go down a really long, strange rabbit hole, I highly recommend reading about some of the con stories. Some of them genuinely believe they were Anastasia, others were just clear con artists out for the scam, and some cases are still being debated today. It is wild. I really, really suggest you go and look at them if you have the time and you're interested in this topic. Or maybe at some point, who knows, we might be going down the rabbit hole together in a future episode. Another element the film gets right is Rasputin. Kind of. In real life, Grigory Rasputin was a mystic who held an unusual amount of influence over the royal family, particularly Empress Alexandra. He claimed he could help treat their son Alexei's haemophilia, which made him incredibly important to her. It was something that really caused her a lot of distress, and here comes this man and claims that he can help her with it. Of course, she's going to put a lot of trust in him. His presence at court caused scandal, resentment, and endless rumours, including suggestions that he and Alexandra were romantically involved, that he had some kind of mystical spell over the royal family and had them under his control, and they were basically doing whatever he wanted, and it made him a bit of a target. Whether any of the rumours are true are still being debated today, but it is clear that Rasputin was deeply hated by many. In 1916, he was murdered in a bizarre and dramatic assassination. The stories vary, but the legend goes that he was poisoned, shot, and then drowned in a freezing cold river, which may seem overkill, but they really didn't like the dude. Some of that may have been exaggerated, because history does love a bit of drama, but it is true that he was murdered, that he was really disliked, and that his influence over the family was real. The film turns him into an undead sorcerer with a talking bat, which is a creative choice that we love. Historically inaccurate, yes, but it was emotionally effective, and it gave us one of the best songs of the film. Another mostly accurate element is the grandmother, voiced by the incomparable Angela Lansbury. I just want to take a second here to send out to the universe my appreciation for Angela Lansbury. She was a huge part of my childhood, as I'm sure she was for many of my generation. She voiced some of the most well-known characters from our childhood, the films we watched over and over. She was Bedknobs and Broomsticks. She was Mrs. Potts. She was so many things to us. And it was such a loss when she died. She died a few days before my birthday, and it was genuinely heartbreaking. I did shed a few tears. And I know that her warm, comforting voice and presence as a narrator or a singer or an actress will be missed by many. But let's bring it back to the movie we are here to talk about. The grandmother, voiced by Angela Lansbury, I've completely lost my train of thought, sorry. She is based on the real Dowager Empress, and I am going to try and pronounce the name, but I apologise if I get it wrong. As with any names in this episode, I'm going to try my best. The Dowager Empress Maria Fyodorovna, mother of Tsar Nicholas II and grandmother to Anastasia. After fleeing Russia, she settled in Denmark, which was her native land, and never fully accepted that her family had been killed. Whether it was grief, denial, or just blind hope, she spent the rest of her life waiting for a miracle. Women like Anna Anderson, one of the most famous Anastasia claimants that we mentioned earlier, were turned away by her, much like in the film. And yet she still held on to the belief that the real Anastasia might one day turn up. Again, just like in the film. Knowing now what we know, with all the historical evidence, we know that she was waiting in vain, and it's genuinely heartbreaking. But it just speaks to the character and the strength of this woman, that she waited her whole entire life for a family member to return to her. So those are some of the things that Fox kept with a slight nod, even if it was twisted and tweaked, a slight nod to the historical story. We are going to take a quick breather before we do a tone change to what Fox Animation changed about the historical story, or what they made up entirely. So get yourself a fresh beverage, move on to your next chore if you are listening to this while you are doing your chores, and we will see you in just a second. Welcome back. If you haven't been anywhere, then hello. Thanks for still being here. We are gonna move on from the sadness of Angela Lansbury being dead and Grand Duchess Maria waiting for family that shall never return, and we are going to talk about the things that Fox Animation made up. The magic and the glowing green baddies and the beautiful songs and the magical bat. Did I say the magical bat yet? The magical bat. So let's get into that bit. We're gonna go back to our good buddy Rasputin. And the biggest thing the film changed about him is that obviously he was not a walking corpse who had sold his soul to the devil and come back to wreak revenge upon the Romanov family. That we know of. As fantastic as he is in the film, in real life, he was just a man. That is what the history tells us. And that is what we should believe. But, as a slight tangent, as one of my favourite historical discussions to bore people with, I say discussion, it's me just talking at people and then just glazing over, which is probably what you will be doing now, but I can't see it, so it's fine, I'm going to continue. One of my favourite discussions is, I use the example of medieval pictures. You know when you see those medieval paintings and in books down the side they will have a cat and the cat's wearing a hat, or there's a bunny playing a lute, or there's a goat with a bow and arrow, and people will look at these medieval paintings and say, wow, they were crazy, look at those. Had the artist ever seen a real horse before? And yes, maybe they had seen a horse before, because maybe that's what they actually looked like back then. Because maybe these crazy medieval animals are the actual historical proof that we have been discounting all along. There is so much evidence of what there is, but there could also be so much evidence missing from things that we have no idea about. We have no idea in history, things that haven't been documented by anybody. And it just blows my mind to think about it. Maybe the medieval animals is a silly example, but it's true. There's so much in history that people at that time they thought was normal, so they never wrote it down. And that's what I like to bore people with. And now I've explained it to you, so enjoy that knowledge. You're welcome, no need to thank me, let's get back to Anastasia. But historically speaking, as that's what we're doing today, sources and data show us that he was a man. And as we said earlier, he was assassinated in 1916 by a group of nobles who believed he was running Russia through the royal family, who were basically his puppets by this time. Unfortunately, it didn't solve everything. They ended up killing more people, as we know now. But he was just a man. Just a man. Now we're going to get on to the really sad parts of what was made up. And the biggest part of what was made up about the film, obviously, is that Anastasia survived. Because she didn't. The central story of the film, that Anastasia survived and lost her memory, is based on a myth that captured the world's imagination for decades. But the truth, as we know, is far more tragic. All 5 Romanov children were executed alongside their parents in 1918. You can see in the Google results now there are still people who are unsure what happened to her. There are people who search, did Anastasia lose her memory? Did she survive? What happened to Anastasia? So it's still, even now, a bit of a history mystery to some people, which is why I'm here. We are here to dispel the myths and get the real story out there. But it wasn't until 2007, nearly 90 years later, that DNA testing sadly confirmed all of the Romanovs had died that night. 2 bodies were found in a separate grave belonging to Anastasia and her younger brother Alexei. And I think that Alexei being the one with her makes it slightly sadder in a way, makes part of the story feel slightly more tragic, because he's the reason Rasputin had such a hold over the Tsarina and the family. And even though Rasputin wasn't the reason for the revolution, he was a big part of the story and of what happened. So it feels slightly sad that Alexei is the one that is in with Anastasia. It is also makes you feel sad when you think of the parts of the film where, especially when she's in the trance on the ship and she is thinking about her family, and her family, her brothers, sisters, mother, father are all there in the pool, and they're all telling her to jump in, and everyone's having fun, a lovely time, and she's really loving in the memory being back with her family. And although in the film it's supposed to be a really scary, dramatic moment where we think that, you know, Rasputin might finally have got his way, it's just really sad because we know they're all dead, and here is this depiction of an animated Anastasia really, you know, trying to get back to her family, loving being in this memory of a really lovely time with them. And it just gets to your heart. But with the DNA tests done, the mystery was finally laid to rest. But by then, the legend had already taken deep root in popular culture, and the most amazing film about it had already been made 10 years earlier in 1997. Along with the sadness of Anastasia not surviving is another tragedy of the story, and that is that none of the household staff survived either. In the movie, we see Dmitri, and he is a former servant of the palace, and he helps her escape through the door in the wall, and later on we know becomes her love interest. And it's a very romantic idea that someone helped her escape and then comes back into her life, but unfortunately none of the palace staff survived either. Several devoted servants chose to accompany the family into exile out of loyalty, even when it was dangerous to do so. Tragically, they were killed alongside the Romanovs in the basement of the house. I feel it's really important that their story is told too, so I'm going to try and pronounce names. Apologies again if I am not doing the names any justice, but I really want to try. Among the staff were Dr. Eugene Botnik, the family physician, Anna Demidova, a maid to Empress Alexandra, Aloysius Trupp, the footman, and the family cook, Ivan Kuridinov. These individuals were executed and buried with the Romanovs in unmarked graves, and they were only identified decades later. Their story is often forgotten in retellings, but their loyalty to the family and quiet courage are heartbreaking reminders of just how many lives were lost that night. And again, I think it's really important their stories are also told, because they would have had family as well, waiting for them, just like Maria did, not knowing what had happened, not knowing the truth. And it was only decades later when the only family that they had left behind could have passed away themselves and would never have known what had happened to their family. It was only then that they were identified and people found out the truth. So we will remember their loyalty to the royal family and their courage in following them when they knew it would probably be pretty dangerous to do so. Sticking with the royalty, the last thing the film got wrong or changed was how it showed the monarchy, and it romanticised it quite a lot. One of the biggest liberties Fox Animation did was it took its portrayal of Imperial Russia and it coated it in fairy dust. It made everything look brilliant and beautiful and amazing, and everyone was really happy, and it wasn't at all a revolution that ended the Romanov line. They a little bit made Rasputin kind of like a Maleficent character, where he's really annoyed that he's been thrown out and he's not welcome to the party, so he just comes and puts curses on everybody. But the Romanov rule was actually marked by extreme inequality, political unrest, and brutal repression. There was a revolution, and the revolution didn't come out of nowhere. It was the result of years of suffering among the working class and the peasantry of Russia. The monarchy was overthrown not by a villain's curse, but by people desperate for food, justice, and social change. The film avoids these complexities because it would be very hard to explain them to a child, but instead it paints the royals as innocent victims of one bad man's spell. It might be emotionally satisfying for a child, but it raises the real reason the Russian Empire fell and the real pain of the people who rose up, although clearly this in no way excuses the killing of small children. They're just wee innocent children. Won't somebody think of the children? You know that thing in The Simpsons where is it Helen Lovejoy, where she comes out and she's always like, won't somebody think of the children? That's what I'm thinking about. Just, if you have to explain a joke, it's not funny, is it? Sorry. I'll see myself out now. But I'll be back in a second for the wrap up. So we have seen Fox Animation took some really big liberties, but they also did take inspiration from the real story. They did some things right, they did some things wrong. But despite its historical inaccuracies, Anastasia remains a beloved classic. It introduced a generation to a real moment in history, even if it was wrapped in fantasy. The Broadway musical deepened the story with a more grounded villain. There's no magical bats. See that as a plus or a minus as you will. I know I have my theories. The movie continues to resonate with anyone who's ever felt lost or longed for a sense of belonging, or if you just like singing because, as I said earlier, some cracking bops. Anastasia is about more than a lost duchess. It's about found family, forgotten identity, and the enduring belief that even the most broken stories can have a hopeful ending. Even though the truth isn't all singing and dancing, we still love Anastasia. I very much do. History isn't always kind, but sometimes looking behind the curtain makes the fairy tale even more powerful. And in a world where history is underappreciated and sanitized, looking behind the curtain is even more important. I hope you have loved hanging out with me today. I've loved so much hanging out with you. And I'm so thrilled to get an audio version of this post out there. It's perfect for those that maybe don't have the time to read the full post or just want someone on in the background as a cozy companion. Hello, while you are doing chores, picking the kids up, general adulting. I am very happy that you have been here with me for this, the very first episode of Rebecca in Audio, and I will see you next time. I appreciate you. Bye bye.